Dear students, good evening. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 30th August 2020. The first article for discussion is GST, states can borrow without hurting economy. So let us take a brief background of this. In GST Council meeting, Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman unambiguously stated that Center is not willing to pay any compensation for the losses coming from COVID-19. They differentiated the GST losses as losses due to implementation of GST and COVID-19 losses. The 101 Amendment Act of the Constitution and Compensation Act, GST Compensation Act 2017 of Parliament, they talk about paying the compensation due to losses related to implementation of GST, not others. And she stated that COVID-19 is an act of God. In this scenario, what is the view of the states? The states have rejected both the options. What are the two options? One is borrow from RBI, the other one is borrow from the market by issuing some bonds, etc. States have rejected both the options, and what the states are requesting, you borrow and give us money. For this, center has given certain explanation. Additional borrowing by the center will affect yields on G6. So government securities, on that yields will come down. Second, as the debt burden of the central government increases, it will affect the credit rating of India in the international markets. It will affect the inflow of capital into India. If the states borrow the money, there will be no such an effect. So in macroeconomic interest, it is better for the states to borrow. And it also spoke about a concession. For whatever the money borrowed, the interest can be paid from compensatory cess as and when it is collected. So this is what is spoken over here. Next, India pulls out of Caucasus due to China. You know, Shanghai Cooperation Organization member countries, which also includes today Turkey, Pakistan, they are conducting exercises. These exercises are called as strategic command post exercises, and India is supposed to participate in that, but due to participation of China and border tensions over there, India is not willing to participate. The next article, the land lost between the river and the sea. This article is the article of the day. It explains in detail the Israel-Palestine problem. Here river refers to Jordan River and the sea refers to Mediterranean. The land between these two is the present day Israel. What are the roots of the conflict? To you understand the roots of the conflict, you have to understand the word Aliyah, Aliyah. Jewish immigrants started coming into the present day land, and this immigration is called as Aliyah. It has started in the 19th century. In 19th century, there was persecution in Europe, especially towards the Jews. Why? Jews are being persecuted. The Jewish are very rich and they are into finance business. So that's why in the European world, the Jews are being seen as exploiters, capitalistic mindset, etc. So that's where the persecution started in the 19th century. They started fleeing from Europe and wanted to come back to their ancestral home, which is present day Israel. But remember, Jews are rich. Either in England or Russia, everywhere, they are very rich. So, a Balfour Declaration came up in 1917. What is this Balfour Declaration? The Balfour is nothing but British Foreign Secretary. He stated that Her Majesty, the Queen, is interested to create a home nation for Jews. She interested to create a new nation for Jews. That is what Mr. Balfour stated, which is famously known as Balfour Declaration. This is what an Arab historian talks as first plunder of Palestine or first declaration of war on Palestine. His name is Rashid Khalidi. Here British intend to have the support of the Jews to fight the Ottoman Empire. Remember, the Palestine, whatever the Israel area today, it was part of the Ottoman Empire. During the First World War, The Britishers are one side, that is English are on one side, and the Ottomans are on the other side. Ottomans are nothing but today's Turks. So, to win over the Ottomans, they wanted to take the financial muscle and support of the Jews. In that context, this Balfour Declaration has come up. Post First World War, Palestine became a British mandated territory. It means under the sovereign control of the British. Now, British have allowed establishment of a Jewish agency to administer the Jews. So, the Jewish agency has become the informal government in that particular area. Our first prototype government in this particular area for Jews. After the Second World War, the Jews are in significant number in this land. Then UN came with a proposal. Let us divide the existing land between Arabs and Jews. An independent Arab state and an independent Jewish state. Jews agreed but not Arabs. Because Arabs don't want to give away their land. They see Jews as someone who came from outside and seeking the land from them. Then 1948 there was war with Arab countries to Israel. Finally Israel won the war. Why did this war come up? On May 14th, 1948, on the last day of end of the British mandate, then the chairman of the Jewish agency, Mr. David Ben-Gurion, unilaterally declared establishment of the state of Israel. In spite of Arabs rejecting the two-nation theory or dividing the region into two independent states, he has unilaterally declared the Israel state. Then Arab countries got frustrated, finally led to war, but Israel was able to win the war. And Israel was able to take 23% more land than proposed by the UN. And West Jerusalem is an important territory took up by the Israel. In 1967, again, Arab countries versus Israel, the war has happened. And this time, Israel is able to take up East Jerusalem and then West Bank from Jordan, Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and Golan Heights from Syria. It means from the various Arab countries it is able to take significant chunk of land. Then, after this 1967 war, the Arab consolidation got weakened. It has led to the rise of PLO. So, Palestinians now are being forced to come forefront and fight. Previously, Arabs were fighting on behalf of the Palestinians, Arab countries. Now, the rise of PLO has brought in a new identity to Palestinians and then began the era of Intifada. It means what is this Intifada? A revolution kind of that. So, people started questioning the Israel authority on their land. After that, US has tried to mediate the peace. Oslo Accords have come up. Oslo Accord is one single ray of hope of peace in this land. In this, Palestinians and Arab countries and also PLO, they agreed to recognize each other. On PLO front, Mahmoud Abbas represented and Israel was represented by the Prime Minister, Mr. Rubin. Mr. Rubin was killed later, that's another story. And PLO and Israel mutually agreed to recognize each other. And Israel also agreed to recognize the authority of Palestinian PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, to govern the West Bank and Gaza Strip. After this, if we consolidate today, the policy of Israel completely changed. How it has changed? Peace for land, it is no more interested. Peace without giving land is what it is interested now. So, Israel do not want to secede any of the land, give out any of the land, but it wants to have the peace. That is what is the situation. Today, what are the three major issues? First one is boundary. The Palestinians and Arab countries want the new Palestinian state be formed based on 1967 boundaries. And then capital. Israel do not want to give East Jerusalem to Palestine. And Palestine considers East Jerusalem as its capital. And this East Jerusalem has holy sites for Muslims, Jews and also to Christians. Haram al-Sharif, which is also called Temple Mount, is very sacred for Jews, Al-Aqsa Mosque is sacred for Muslims. So, final thing is the Palestinians who are who have become refugees, what about their plight? Can they come back? So, the right of return of the Palestinians who are displaced. These are the three things which are in question now. This is where the problem stands today. The next is the fountainhead of terror. Here, Jaish-e-Mohammed is being focused. Now, America has a very strict policy that it will not negotiate with terrorists. In India, when Indian Airlines flight IC-814 is hijacked, India released a terrorist by name Masood Azhar. He is the chief of Jaish-e-Mohammed today, and he is responsible for Pulwama attack on Indian Parliament, all this. Why did he attack the Indian Parliament? It is to show to India that no place is inaccessible to him. In this context, how they are able to recruit people from Kashmir and different parts of India for their terrorist activities, that's where comes the social media and then active speeches which they provide for. So India has to find a strategy to curtail the spread of these videos on internet. That is what we need to understand. The next is Japan's eternal prime minister. Mr. Shinzo Abe is the longest served Japanese prime minister, and he has announced his demitting of the office yesterday, and he has cited certain health reasons for the same. How he can be remembered? Yesterday I have covered few things. Today I am talking about Abenomics. You know, Japan is in a constant recession. For years together it is in recession. Though it is the third largest economy, it is more export dependent economy. If any kind of shocks comes on external front, in any global economic shock, the first country which will get worst affected is Japan. So, what he proposed is loose monetary policy, big fiscal stimulus and economic reforms. That is his mantra for the Japanese long survived recession. Next is nationalism. You know, Japan has a pacifist constitution which was imposed on it after the Second World War, after the loss in Second World War. In this case, he wanted to reinterpret the constitution to allow the deployment of Japanese troops outside Japan. So he wanted to move the Japanese constitution away from pacifism. Relations with China. Here we have an important learning. Shinzo Abe, he has showed strong will towards China in economic relations, but at the same time he has worked to curtail the rise of China. Here, Chinese influence to curtail that, he has worked closely, actively in association with India. At the same time, in 2014 at APEC summit, he himself voluntarily asked a meeting with Xi Jinping, who is the Chinese premier. And second, there are territorial disputes between China and Japan. Senkaku Islands are a territorial dispute between China and Japan. So in such a scenario, when he took the office in 2012, when Japan nationalized Senkaku Islands, there was a huge diplomatic uproar in China. How he handled it is a great example for his statesmanship. And Indo-Japan relations have dramatically improved during Abe's era. The reason is, Mr. Abe is emotionally connected to India because Abe's grandfather was also the Prime Minister of Japan. When he visited India, he remembers Nehru's great reception to him, which he said that when I was sitting on his knee, he used to explain me about India's reception to him. And when after the Second World War, the Japan is seen as an outcasted country, and Japan's reputation was at its lowest after the Second World War. India has received him well. So that's why even in the loss, you need to show your magnanimity. That's what the Jawaharlal Nehru showed over there. And Quad, for regional stability, he has brought in Quad, that is India, USA, Australia, and then Japan. These four countries are Quad. And Indo-Pacific is the word coined by him. So Indo-Pacific, what does this mean? It's a new idea or a new geographical location. This provides for a lot of prosperity. So these are all the things we can remember him for. This is another important article today. What is the new idea on supply chains? Japan proposed for supply chain resilience initiative. What is this? The supply chains got affected due to various reasons. It may be natural, man-made, or other issues. Natural causes like tsunami has affected the supply chain of Honda from Thailand. Similarly, when Japan and China had tensions, China stopped exporting rare earth metals. And COVID 19, how supply chains got disrupted, we all saw. And US Chinese tensions, how they are affecting various major industries. In this context, Japan is proposing a new plan that is called Supply Chain Resilience Initiative. In this, Japan wanted to actively work with India and Australia. India has border tensions with China, and Australia also is inconvenient with China. And when COVID 19 has come up, Australia has clearly stated or questioned the ineffective action of China. And China criticized the racism in Australia. In such a scenario, India Australia being chosen appears to be a strategic move. So, the next point is India is also very dependent on China for critical elements like active pharmaceutical ingredients. But however, China is able to lock every economy with its economy, and China, if you observe with Japan, almost 40% of the trade goes to China. In India, close to 25% goes to China. So that's why coming out of the China is not also an easy matter. In this case, $2.2 billion of incentives created by Japan for its companies to move out of China to the other countries. That is the point important here. Xi Jinping calls for building impregnable wall for Tibet. What is this impregnable wall? It is nothing but ideological indoctrination. What he proposes is every child in Tibet shall be indoctrinated with Chinese ideology, and Tibetan Buddhism has to be changed to promote Sinicization. Sinicization means promoting the Chinese culture in Tibet. So it means Tibet's unique culture is going to be undermined. US vote amid COVID 19. In United States of America, why such a mess is there always with elections? The reason is across the country there is no single body to monitor, control and supervise the elections. Every state has its own election law and it has to conduct the elections according to their own laws. In India, we have election commission. If you see, US does not have anything like that. Multiple laws, multiple procedures, everything makes the things complicated. The mail-in voting is there from many years in USA, but today the scale of operation is too high. In this case, Trump wants it to be foolproof and it has to be very stringent. Why he wants it to be stringent? When it is stringent, who will be left out from voting? African Americans, etc. He knows that African Americans anyhow do not vote for him. He wants to eliminate minorities and aggregate majority. So on the other hand, Democrats want less rules, more flexibility for mail-in voting so that voters can exercise their franchise. The next is Age of Illiberalism by Mr. Sampath. This article is about Western notion of liberalism and its challenges. After collapse of USSR, people like Francis Fukuyama called end of history and proposed Western liberalism based on the principles of individual freedom, democracy, free market capitalism are the only way forward. In this book, written by Mr. Pankaj, he criticizes this particular thing. The Western liberalism is a myth. It is not liberal. And he tries to trace the history. During colonial era, one way these liberals are promoting ideas of freedom, free speech, etc. in London. On the other side, the colonialism is also promoted by them, saying that it is necessary for liberating the minds of the people. It is a civilizing mission or white man's burden. These are the words they have used. So it means liberalism is an elitist concept to serve certain self-interests. That is what he proposes for. In this, he gives another example, Wilsonian movement. Wilson gave a great liberal speech after the First World War, which is to create national self-determination. It means colonies, if they want to be independent, they can become independent from their colonial country, that their master. But in spite of this, nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. So it means liberalism is more on words but not in actions. It is just to plunder and create a wealth for oneself. That's why liberalism is a concept of elite Western liberalism to promote their own fortunes. That's how this article talks about.